Hey everybody, this is Cheri, your Dysgraphia consultant. I'm here today with the TV teacher, Marnie Danielson. Tell us a little bit about how you became an OT.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. Um, Becoming an OT, it was like a meant to be thing for sure. When I found OT, every part of my soul was happy. I mean, I just knew that this was the right thing for me. Hence, I had to become a real student because I never was a great student. And then I decided, oh, I want to be an OT, and I had to get into an OT school.
Hmm.
But when I became an OT, I really just loved the combination of the diversity of it within the field. There's so much you can do, but I also loved that you could be creative within the field of health. And I love the combination of art and science together. And there's truly an art to this
Oh,
practice as
yes.
well as the scientific aspect, the
Yes.
evidence base.
Yeah, and I personally love the integration into education because
Yes.
that's another aspect of that art and science and education all blended into one career. It's amazing.
Yes, it is. It is amazing. I thank every star in the universe and God and everyone every day that I get to do this because I just enjoy it so much. And my daughters can tell you I'm like, become an OT. I really
Yeah.
like what I do.
Yeah, that didn't happen in my house. They are going every which way they can, but
All over.
occupational therapy.
Yeah.
But I have one who's a meteorologist and one who is right now a web designer but loves music. So we'll see how that
All
turns
kinds
out
of
in the
things.
next
Yes.
couple of years.
All good. All good things.
Yeah. So you serve clients and students in a very unique way. Tell us a little bit about what is the TV teacher?
Okay, so this was the brainchild of my partner, Susan Ellis, my business partner. She lives in Georgia. I lived in Georgia at the time outside of Atlanta.
Okay.
And
And interrupt you. You're currently
yeah,
living in Dallas, correct?
yes, yes.
Okay.
I live in
And she
Dallas
still
now.
is in Atlanta?
Yes. So
Okay.
this company has been around, I mean, 13 years, 12 years. Crazy.
Wow. And it's
Yeah.
now just coming to its own, right? Isn't that the way it is with an entrepreneur? It takes 10 years and then like all of a sudden everybody knows about you, but you've been struggling for the last 13, right?
It takes a long time. Anybody who says they were an overnight success never went to sleep. I mean, it takes a long time,
Yes,
and
it does.
we're always growing. I mean, we're always trying to figure out, some years are great, some years are tough. It just depends on the year and who's interested and the connections we meet. But this was the brainchild of my partner, Susan Ellis, and myself. She brought her son into my clinic at the time, and he was going into kindergarten, and all she wanted to do was see him write his name. She's like, he had a diagnosis of autism.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
and so I was like, okay, let's get out all the stuff that I have in this clinic and let's start working. And I mean, throwing the pencil across the room, he was so frustrated and disinterested and not engaged with
How
the idea.
often do we see that with a lot of our students, the pencil throwing or uh,
Mhm.
crumbled paper or over erasing, all those things that we see all the time.
I know. And it really is just a message. It's just a message to you to tell you how difficult this task really is for this
Hmm.
child because they really want to please.
Yeah.
And mom, Susan, came up with this idea. She said, he was watching this show and they were teaching a dance move and he learned the dance move from watching it. I mean, right
Wow.
away.
Like 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 that show that ABC has on, the celebrity dancers.
I don't think it was that advanced, but I think it
Oh,
was
there you
pretty
go.
advanced for a 5-year-old. I
Okay.
think that yeah, and I kind of want to say it was like Magic Pizza. It was like a video that she had, and they were
Oh,
dancing,
she was teaching some dance steps, and isn't
and he
that
got it
cool?
right. And so she said, maybe we try this with handwriting. So I did some volunteering and I was like, all right, I'll meet you at your house and you can video me doing it on video and then we'll play it for him and see. And I had always used, I don't really like teaching handwriting.
Now there's the secret. You're the TV teacher and don't like you're doing what you. So there
That's
we go. There's the secret, people. You
that's
don't
the
always
secret.
get involved in the thing that you love the most.
Yes, that's how this whole thing started. So I always said these kind of rhythmic auditory chants every time we were writing, just to try to just another sensory component to try to reinforce the formation. So I did these sensory or no, these auditory chants, excuse me. She videoed me writing. We tried to make it interesting. And we did the letter C first because I was kind of thinking, okay, magic C. We'll try with, we'll try a handwrite without tears, approach. And I left that day and she called me. It was a weekday and I was in my waiting room waiting for a client, hysterical, like, oh my gosh, it's been 2 minutes and he's writing. And it's something
Whoa.
it was like a minute or two into the video and he was like, oh, I want to do it. And he
Wow.
made it and he made it perfectly.
Well,
And
isn't that a whole piece of the video really works? I remember when I was growing up, I'm going to date myself. I was growing up in the 70s. Okay. But Schoolhouse Rock, that's how I learned anything about language.
yeah, I'm just a Bill. Oh, wait,
Yes.
yeah, that's Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah. So, I mean, he really just got it. And then that must have been in like an April, May time. We decided to do that because over the summer, we decided to make him these video presents, his mom would call them, and she would come home with different letters. And he learned
Okay.
his whole alphabet before
Over
kindergarten.
the summer.
Over the summer. It was like a 2-month thing. She would come in, we would make the letter F, he would write it, we'd do another letter. I mean, and we would think of like these fun, things to do within the letter chapters. We called them letter chapters. So they're like 4 to 5 minutes long. There's visual, there's auditory. And then she had the motivation to make this into a professional production. She found the college we used a technical college. We were in their studio
Wow.
weeks on end, and we created the upper and lowercase alphabet beats, and that's how it started.
Wow. And now you have several different things. You have alphabet beats, you have number beats, you had a couple more shapes beats or something like that.
We have stroke shapes and scenes, and that's a pre-writing DVD that was like a near and dear to my heart thing for the kids who aren't quite there with the letters yet, but just need to work on shapes and drawing. And then we have a Fun Foundations for Handwriting. I say DVD because they started off as VHSs and DVD.
Wow. Does that ever date us? I mean, in the world of technology, it's like a lightning round when you go from VHS to video on YouTube.
I know. So yes, so now it's just streaming. And I mean, you can of course purchase it on a flash drive. You can get it as a DVD if you wanted to, or you can stream it anywhere. So, and then we have an app as well for the lowercase that kids seem to really enjoy. But the Fun Foundations for Handwriting, what I was saying, it's a streaming program as well and DVD. And it's kind of like, it talks about margins. We have the Margin Magician.
Oh, so it talks about some of those behind the scenes pieces of handwriting that not everybody can get to. Got it.
Yeah. We have Space Commander for spacing. We have the Size Wise Private Eye for letter size. And we talk through these different clips.
Like
so yeah, and it's really fun. It's really fun. The kids love it. Yeah.
So who's buying your program? I mean, is it individuals? Is it schools? Is it therapists? Is it teachers? Who's buying?
It's a very cost-effective program. I mean, you can buy, for instance, you could buy the Stroke Shapes and Scenes program for $25, I think, online.
What?
And yeah.
Are you giving things away?
It's super duper. Well, now we are, but it's super cost effective. So you could have a parent who's just looking for good educational content buying it. We get a lot of those. We get school systems
So,
and
so
OTs
you're
are,
getting a lot of homeschool moms.
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Homeschool is a big client of ours, and OTs are probably our biggest because they just get it. They see it and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is a tool I should have in my
Mm-hmm.
toolbox, and it's affordable. So it's easy to implement. Have it anywhere on your phone
Oh,
or wherever. Yeah.
cool. Cool.
Yeah. So it's great.
But TV teacher isn't the only thing that you do. You have something else that you have some kind of a private practice, I believe, in Dallas. Tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
So Susan runs the logistics of TV Teacher. She's got a business and sales background, so she's really good for that. And it's not always in my wheelhouse to do all that. But I don't really sit still very well. So I opened up a private practice when I moved here. It's about 10 years old now. And I service with a couple other OTs. I keep it real simple now. We go into the preschools and work.
Okay.
And there's a lot of private preschools in the Metro Dallas area. So that's where we are. And
Okay.
then I designed kind of like these fine motor centers that I do with my preschool age children and to prep them for handwriting. And I started with one school, but now I'm doing it in like 4 different
Hmm.
schools. So
Are you using an eclectic approach, like you're taking a little bit of this program and a little bit of that program, or have you really gotten to the point where you have evolved into your own centers?
I really don't base it on, I mean, we could probably track the ideas to different programs for sure, because, this is all based on my knowledge, which is,
Which
grown over 20 something
I'm the
years.
same way. Like all my stuff comes from somewhere.
Yeah, I'm sure it's all coming from somewhere. I have no doubt. So I would never discredit anybody else. But for me, I just design these centers to really focus. When I talk to people about handwriting, I talk about a pyramid, and I feel
Mm,
like the handwriting's at the tippy top. So these fine motor centers are really working on the lower parts of the pyramid because these kids are threes, fours, and fives. And even though
mm-hmm.
you're like, gosh, that sounds young, I've got to work on the strengthening, the endurance, the confidence to do, the tasks, the multi-step
Mm-hmm.
processing, the following directions piece. So that's really where we are, because by
So what you're saying is your triangle is a very sensory motor foundation
yes,
that you're building up the pieces to the handwriting.
yes. And we can do that. And grasping,
Mm-hmm.
which is where that chopper song comes in, that we talk
Chopper
about.
song.
Yes. So
Tell me a little bit about that. I'm going to sidetrack us right now.
so that is one of the things I like to do with grasping patterns, because I was finding that when I worked in the school systems for the period of time I worked a couple of years in the schools, I was going literally from desk to desk showing kids, okay, put your index finger here, put your thumb here. This is where I want you to put this, balance this
Mm,
here. So what I started doing with my threes and fours is teaching them a song called The Alligator Chop. And I sing it, and I think all of my videos for the TV teacher. So I sing it in those. And the idea is that with the threes, we make an alligator like this. We have a long gator snout. And then the idea is that the gator chops on the marker or the crayon. And we sing a song, and it's really just doing this motion, getting that dissociative feeling.
mm.
And we sing a short song every time we see each other. And then for the fours and fives, for the pre-K kids, I tell them to tuck in their fingers, kiss them goodnight,
Oh
and
my
then they
goodness, I love
also
it.
do the alligator chop. And the idea again is to reinforce that tripod. These are the fingers. So then toward the end of pre-K, all you have to do in a pre-K classroom that I'm in is say, use your choppers, and everybody looks and everybody adjusts, and they know exactly what they're supposed to do.
Hmm.
So it really is creating a language. It's reinforcing the motor pattern. So
Well, I will have to make sure that I include specifically the chopper song in those show notes, because that is definitely one that I've struggled with myself, is getting those kids to realize that we need to
uh-huh.
use these fingers. I've used dice in there and tried to get it to
Right.
reinforce it. We've used little small pencils and small crayons, but sometimes they still don't get it.
Yeah. And I really, when people ask me about that, I stay away from all of that if possible, because I feel like, well, and you have to understand that I'm working in a neurotypical population.
Mm-hmm.
So I might go into a pre-K classroom and two kids kind of look like they're going to have ADHD, and one kid kind of looks like they're going to be dyslexic, but we're not quite sure. And yes, you've got that mishmash, but they're there and they're at a maybe a different cognitive level or motoric level than some of
Mm-hmm.
our other kids we might see. But in a regular ed classroom, this is how I approach it. I try to stay away from the grippers and the cotton balls and the if we can, because I feel like let them feel their own, body out. Let that proprioceptive input take hold. And it just
Mm-hmm.
takes that reinforcement. So if I do
Yeah.
this every week with them, we don't have those problems a lot of
Yeah.
time.
I did a video called the Jellyfish where I have them going in and out just to get used to moving the fingers. Because I see
Mhm.
one of the other things is they're not used to bending their eyepiece.
I know.
And eyepiece, for those of you who don't understand the lingo, that's the joint that is in your fingertips. It's interphalangeal.
Mhm.
Yeah, we got one of those on the thumb
I'm your
too.
visual demonstration.
So I
So,
kind of sidetracked us. Did we answer the question? Probably not,
did
because
we?
I didn't even think I even asked it yet. But um, between your private practice and TV teacher, you've talked a little bit about you're going into preschools, and
Yes.
you talk a little bit about your caseload. What's your day like with the going into a preschool? It sounds to me like your program could very well be developed into an RTI program.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure.
And
In fact, yes.
and
Um,
and so is that kind of what your day looks like? Tell us a little bit more.
I would think so. Yes. I would definitely say you could adapt that into an RTI program. And I actually did a study 3 years ago now for AOTA. I presented a poster presentation on RTI and the TV teacher. But this is a little different segue because I'm doing fine motor centers. Some of my preschools use
Okay.
the teacher, some don't. But when I do the fine motor centers, I'll just lay it out for you. They're 30 minutes long. So I'll go into a classroom of 14 or 15 kids and two teachers a lot of times. That's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time the ratio I run into. And I sit down with all the kids. I present, we're going to do this activity, and then we're going to do this activity. So this activity might be we're going to be ripping to create a wrapping paper collage and working on that pattern of rip, 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 rip. And then this activity might be we're going to play Save the Fish. And if you go on my Instagram account too, like Save the Fish is when we have fish in one bucket and we have to wring out a washcloth
Ah,
repetitively to get the water level higher to save the fish. So we
love it. So you're
it
really getting a lot of that supination, pronation, rotation going on with that twisting.
yes, and the mass grasp and the strengthening, so there's a lot and all that sensory work with the water.
Oh
They
gosh, after this week, just so everybody knows, I painted my office this week. I just did that. And like my supinators, my top of my arms going, what in the world did you just do? Oh,
yeah, yeah, all that extension. Woo.
yeah.
So I will do the activities and then we'll do the chopper song every time. And that's the 30 minutes. I mean, it goes like that. And so during that time of those centers, we're doing three things. We're well, number one, we're building skill. That's the number one
Mm-hmm.
thing. Number two, we're kind of looking at a bell curve. So most of the kids, fine, no problem. Some of the kids, ding, 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 something's really hard for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the ding, ding, ding kids, the kids we're a little concerned about, we just kind of take a note and then we start to look for a profile, as the time
Mm-hmm.
goes on together. So
Do
I'm
you
working with the teachers.
Yeah, do you have a tool that you use to check off those little red flag check marks? Do you have a formalized tool, or are you just going, yeah, this isn't right,
I really
intuition
just
wise?
collaborate with the teacher and we note and then I guess I do have a tool. I do a parent feedback sheet. So
Mm-hmm.
and the parents love this. So every time I go into a center, I provide the feedback sheet. It says what we did, and it says how much assistance they needed. So
Okay.
some teachers make a photocopy of it so they can keep for their notes when they have to make documentation on how a child's
Mm-hmm.
doing, how much assistance they need. And it is like a 1 minute fill out per kid. The hardest part is writing the kid's name. That probably takes the longest. And if you're just checking off how much assistance they
That's
needed.
lovely. Is that
Yeah.
something that you're willing to share?
Oh yeah. Oh
Oh,
yeah.
right. Wonderful. I'd love it.
Yeah. It's very fun. It's a very fun way to work in a
Yeah.
regular ed setting, but also be able to screen for kids that might need more
Mhm.
support.
The
And
reason I ask you that about sharing that is one of the therapists that has graduated from the Handwriting Brain-Body Disconnect course and is a dysgraphia specialist, and I are co-writing a preschool program. And right now we're looking at materials to include into that program. So
mhm.
we would love to have you as part of our resources in that
Yes,
program.
absolutely. And I think also um, dysgraphia speaks very much, it works very well with the TV teacher as well because it's a multisensory
Mm-hmm.
approach. You know, you get the visual piece and the auditory piece together. And the interesting thing to me about that tool, the TV teacher, is that we have so many kids that the parents will send us the work sample, like, oh my gosh, look at these letters, but there's no previous work sample because they went from refusing. It's like they went from not crawling to walking, all of a
Right,
sudden writing.
right,
So
right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to sometimes get that pre existing appearance. You're right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you talk a little bit about most of your caseload right now is preschools. You have a lot of familiarity with autism. Is that most of your caseload? Or are you also having some of those other diagnoses flash in there that you can go, ooh, that one's going to be an ADD, or are you able to identify those gifted students? Like that kind of a
Sometimes. I mean, it's
sometimes.
all continuum based. Kids are
Mm-hmm.
amazing. And sometimes they present one way 1 year and literally come back after spring break or the summer. And you're like, who is this kid? So that is always
Yeah.
amazing too. Um, but sometimes it is very clear. It is clearer to me now more than ever. I think just because of years of doing this, who needs what pretty
Mm-hmm.
quickly. And that is always difficult to convey to teachers and parents because it's kind of one of those things. One of my favorite things to do is when I get a referral for a child, I like to go in the classroom and I like to say to the teacher, don't tell me. Don't tell me who it is. I just want to see. And I like to test myself and see if I can pick out who the referral is.
Very cute
I don't want
idea.
to
I
know who
like
Brian
that.
is. I just want to look, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And chances are that I pick out someone else and they're like, oh yeah, he needs it too. but but
That's okay. That's not a problem.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay. And like I said, kids are dynamic and amazing. And sometimes my caseload is doing that. And I do, to answer your question, I do see a lot of kids that I think like, oh gosh, attention. Oh gosh, maybe something, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm diagnosing in my head. But of course, that's not my skill set, even
That is
though,
no, that is not. But I do
so
believe that we have enough knowledge base as occupational therapists that we can go, we need to lean this way with this one.
yeah. And our job is to beat the drum. That's
Mm-hmm.
really one of the jobs, whether teachers and parents want to hear it or not, because most of my teachers are very welcoming to feedback. Most of my parents are very welcoming, but then we get some that are not as welcoming, and it's
That
hard
is
for
true.
them. It's very hard for them to understand. So beating the drum is a big part of the job, and that makes some people not
Right.
appreciate you very much because it's hard to hear some of the things you have to say.
Yeah.
um
I see a lot of those parents that have that first child that never had any developmental education go, well, that's what my kid is.
right,
And don't realize that when they compare to the norm and the typical, that's not their kid.
right, Right. And yeah, there's a lot. It's very hard. I mean, your heart
Mhm.
is wrapped up in that child, and we both have kids. We both get that. So it's
Yeah.
very hard sometimes to break through. It takes a lot of patience and grace and kindness to do that.
Yes.
So,
Amen. Amen
yeah,
on that.
yeah.
So I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I like to ask this question of everybody because everybody is so unique in what they do as occupational therapists. We are so diverse. We're so adaptive. What is your favorite do-it-yourself treatment tool? What is your favorite DIY tool?
Oh, there are so many. I am like so lucky because one of the preschools I worked in, um, they allowed me to build a sensory gym in their preschool.
Oh,
So
isn't that wonderful? I had one brick and mortar
mm,
that allowed that let me have one. It was amazing.
I know it's so amazing. And it's not my gym. I mean, tons of teachers and therapists are using it now for different reasons,
Mhm.
but it's just so great that we have it. So, but yes, I'm a big fan of DIY. And if you go to the TV Teacher Instagram, there's a lot of DIY ideas, especially right now. We need them more than ever because everyone's
Mhm.
at home. So we have to get very creative. But my favorite, I love making Play-Doh. I love
Play-Doh.
it. I
You
love
and
actually.
Jamie, you guys both like to use recipes.
Oh, yes, I love making Play-Doh, and I love, like, okay, for instance, one of my fine motor centers was a cookie station. So I made Play-Doh and I had to make sure the kids didn't eat it, but the Play-Doh had like almond extract or some extract in it, maybe some vanilla, and like so it smelled like cookie dough. And so they had a cookie dough race. So they had to use cookie cutters to make different cookies and put them on a tray, and we saw who could fill their tray first, which was hard. It was hard
So
for them.
when you were making your Play-Doh, you made your Play-Doh with like a gluten-free foundation?
I have that recipe. Sometimes I use that. I don't have a lot of kids that have gluten sensitivities right now to touch,
Mm-hmm.
tactile. Once they ingest it, that's a different story. But I do have that on hand as well with different types of
Mm-hmm.
flour, and then I have the regular. So yes, and I
Share that
love.
recipe with us afterwards so that I can share the gluten-free, because I find that sometimes it's hard to know which one works well because some of them can get really gritty and some of
Yes,
them just are awkward. But then
yeah,
you have other ones that last forever.
yeah, yeah. The other thing I just can't live without is painter's tape. I put that stuff
Really? You
everywhere. You
have
have
to
it.
understand with me
You
painting
have
that
it.
I have like different sizes all around me this week.
I know. I can't get enough of it. And when I do like TV teacher presentations, actually I think it's on our Fun Foundations. We use painter's tape quite a bit, but I mean you can use it for so many things for
Hmm.
kids and creating so many different activities. And I just love painter's tape. I make obstacle courses with it. I do vertical work with it.
Cool. Do you ever go into client homes?
I do. Yeah, I
And do you
do.
use the painter's tape in there?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And
And
it
parents are
glows.
receptive to it?
I'm sorry.
And parents are receptive to using it?
I haven't found one who is not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't found one who's not. Usually I explain to them, what it is and that it's not gonna harm anything. And you do have to be careful because sometimes painter's tape does take off paint. Like if you don't pull it right. I've had that experience too in my own home. That I'm like, oh, that took off a little speck of paint. And so that you obviously want to avoid. But a lot of times I use it on the floor. I make
Use it on
obstacle
carpet.
all the time. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's always the parents are like, oh, don't pull that out. All the dog hairs coming off when they're pulling it off. You're like, just leave that on.
Hmm. And
you know,
they parents get so self-conscious of their homes and they expect their home to be immaculate when you come to visit, and we're not looking at that. We're looking at what is going to be functional for the child. So I love it. Parents are bringing out that concern about
I
the
know.
tape,
It's
but
not
yeah,
clean. There's dishes in the sink. I'm like, guess what?
there's dishes
I
in
just
my sink too.
do. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I know. I know.
And maybe I need to show them my take
Yeah.
pictures of this room at the moment, because
Right. You only
put that
knew.
on Instagram. This is what's happening this week.
Uh, I know. It's crazy.
And it was
So
very unexpected. Something happened and I had to start it, and I was like, I'm finishing the project. It's just but it was very, very not planned. Let's put it that way.
sometimes that's the best way to go.
Yes.
That's kind of the theme of the past couple months. Nothing has been planned.
Nothing has been planned. No.
So we're just going with the theme.
Yes. That sounds great.
Yeah.
Okay. Back to my questions. OTs are part of the IEP team.
Yes.
And one of the things that I find is there's a lot of misunderstanding about occupational therapist in that meeting. And maybe I'm tweaking the question a little bit for you, but what's your greatest challenge when you have that situation and you're trying to communicate with the other staff what's happening and they're just not getting it? Are you finding that take home tools are better, or are you finding that just having that real, honest, true discussion in that IEP meeting is the best choice?
I guess I'm not Okay, so tell me what you're asking. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Repeat the question.
Yeah. So your biggest challenge in the IEP meeting, if there's they're not understanding what you're trying to tell them.
Okay.
Like you got a situation and you're trying to explain it and it's not coming through. Are you finding that a private conversation is a little bit easier? Are you giving out handouts? How are you dealing with difficult situations in an IEP meeting?
Well, it depends on the situation. It depends on how receptive the people who are listening are. Some people don't really want to hear what we do. So there's an expression I love to say often, which is do what you can with what you have wherever you are. So you have to key into who's the most receptive. And in an IEP meeting, you pray that you have receptive
parents
colleagues.
and
You pray
teachers.
for that. Yeah, because you don't want to be sitting there and go nowhere. And you want to make realistic goals and goals that make sense to everybody to be working on. And how are we going to do this together? But if I'm not getting through, sometimes it's a follow-up. It depends. If it's the parent, sometimes we're all trying to get through. Sometimes it's a break. Sometimes it's information overload. If it's a teacher, sometimes the same thing. Sometimes it's just information overload.
Yeah.
Or, what I try to stay the most away from is ego. I try to really take the ego out of it and
really work on helping the child.
Right.
Focus on the child.
It's not about you and what you can do and all these things you can do. It's about, number one, what do the parents need? What does the teacher need in the classroom to make it functional? We're here to serve. That's our job. How do we let go of that ego and just serve? So hopefully that's the number one thing I do when I'm with, that group.
Do you get into a lot of IEP meeting situations?
I get into, and they're called ARDs here too. And I do go to some, not a lot. I do more of like team meetings in the preschool with
team meetings.
Everybody.
Okay.
I'm in a lot of inclusion schools. So I do get a lot of kids with diagnoses, mostly autism, ADHD would be the primary two.
So do you have a challenge in those situations where you're going into the schools like that?
My biggest challenge, well, I should say it's not always a challenge. Sometimes it's wonderful, but one of my soapboxes is for teachers and parents to understand the power of early intervention. And
how early are you talking early intervention? Are you talking from birth on, or are you talking 3 to 5?
From birth on, because if I see, and I don't get to see the babies as much as I want to because I love the babies. But if I start seeing primitive reflexes that shouldn't be there, or motoric
Mm-hmm.
patterns that I'm concerned about, or oral motor issues, I would love, I mean, and a lot of times the teachers in those situations are very aware because they handle enough babies that they see a baby who's not responding the same. So
Mm-hmm.
it's time to alert the parents. Um, but then we get into the threes and fours, which is really where I get my hands in the
You get your
most.
hand, yes.
And it's a difficult time because, like I said, they can jump, they're moving targets, kids. I always call them moving target. It's hard to know when they're going to
Yes.
jump. And, for sure that's happened to me too. And that again is very humbling when you're like, ooh, I didn't mean to say that because look at how great they are now. That happens, that has happened. But more often than not, if I get that gut instinct, something's up, I want to express in a, again, kind, graceful fashion to everybody involved, hey, maybe we need to intervene in some way. And it doesn't always have to look like, okay, they need speech and OT and they need ABA and they need that, it doesn't always have to look like that. It could look like, this is some things we can do at home and let's see how that affects when they enter the classroom, or, but
Yeah.
just being open to that is hard, that early.
Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's difficult, especially if you got a kid who's refusing all the time and you have to break through that mold.
Yes. Yes.
But 3 to 5 is such a crucial time in the child's fine motor development. We have to do so many wonderful things for them just to get them past that
Right.
stage of having a clue what they're supposed to be doing with a crayon in their hand.
Right. And the expectations when they get out of preschool are very different now,
Mm-hmm.
than they were when we were growing up. So there's a lot higher expectation there. They really want them knowing their letter formations. In the elementary schools I see in Dallas ISD, they want them, they might go through letter A, B, and C, in one day. They might say, okay, let's review these letters. And now we're going to start writing work. They kind of jump a little bit in kindergarten because the expectation
Mm-hmm.
is that they have exposure, a lot of
Yeah.
those.
There's a research study that was done a few years ago. I think it was in 16, but I could be wrong on the date. It was in another journal, not AJOT. They did an entire New York state wide study, and we're talking about handwriting and the education of the teacher about handwriting and the lack thereof, and the amount of time that a child is doing handwriting in their school day. It was a very, very interesting article. 60% of the day is handwriting.
It's crazy.
30% of the day is fine motor skills. That leaves what,
Nothing
20% of maybe reading intake. I'm not sure what that other 20% is, but it was really
lunch. It's lunch.
lunch, recess.
Yeah.
But when you look at how much of their time is using their hands, it's so
Mhm.
important to get
Yes.
those little hands moving
Right.
early and
Right.
effectively.
Right. Right. I mean, and that ties right into the body. I mean, it's like we're teaching here up and here, so I mean, we got to get I'm a big advocate of gross motor work too. I mean, we do a
Mm-hmm.
lot of
Yeah,
that.
I like in preschool. I like to do a lot of over, under, around, in between, behind activities because they don't know their directions, and that helps with that whole body awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's more screen time. I mean, there's more of
Yeah,
that happening too. So that I think maybe affects some stuff
yeah.
and
One
self-regulation.
thing that I'm finding is like pushing on the phone. They're
Hmm.
not actually pushing like they did years ago. Like to use the example of a manual typewriter, electric typewriter, the keyboard today, and a phone, and how much you have to push just to get the A or whatever letter you want to pick down. When you compare those four devices, it's so different. And
I
even
know.
keyboards today are so different. You can get different styles of keyboards to increase the amount of feedback that you need in your finger to get them to work.
Right, right. I know. It is amazing. So we keep all this in mind at a very young age. And I think, again, beating the drum is a big part of our job, saying, you know, this is why I think, and beating the drum in a very objective and, if you will, scientific way, so that it doesn't sound
Right.
like you're being opinionated,
Right.
you're being objective about it.
Right.
Yeah. So that is a challenge. And that's one of the things that I'm there for to do.
Wonderful. So
Yeah.
that means that a lot of your day is handwriting, handwriting related activities, or handwriting specifically?
Well, I do have two groups I use with the TV teacher. I have a developmental drawing group that I use
Mhm.
with the Stroke Shapes and Scenes program. And then I have a happy handwriting group. I have two happy handwriting groups that I use, uppercase and lowercase alphabet beats. And then when I treat privately, I would say 20% of my treatment is handwriting, because a lot of
Mhm.
times, again, I'm huge into the gross motor, the midline pieces, the visual motor pieces, and then we weave that work into our sit
Mhm.
down and write. But again, these kids are 4 years old. I'm not going to expect them to have an extended, you know, attention span. So I
Mhm.
feel like that is a very fair percentage. As they get older, that will change for sure.
Right.
So I would say, I mean, 100% is the idea of getting them writing for sure. Everything works toward the top of the pyramid.
Mhm.
Everything I do.
But
Yeah.
it's amazing how much the very tip of the pyramid is the handwriting, and how much of it is the entire rest of the pyramid.
Yes. Yes, for sure. And that's
Uh,
where I stay
I
lower.
Oops, I just hit the mic. It's probably heard this nasty noise come through.
No.
Sorry. Um, I have a pyramid also that I use when I'm talking about my program, and I really see that sensory motor and memory are really the foundation. On top of that, we build language, and on top of that, we build cognition.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I I see a big area of need is memory. Getting the kids to be able to recall spontaneously, just know what is
Right.
that letter that I'm looking for, and they're struggling. They're
I know.
struggling.
That hippocampus, man. I mean,
Yeah, that hippocampus.
it's the key to everything. And really, it is the key. That's where our memory centers are in our
Yeah.
brain. And
A-
it's
And it's amazing how much the hippocampus depends on sleep, and how many of our kids that are struggling are lacking sleep.
mhm,
And I talk about sleep in a lot of things that I do, and people don't make that connection.
mhm. Right, right. Yes, I
And
know.
I get a lot of, well, why are you talking about sleep? We're talking about school. I was like, because the lack thereof is not going to make school work.
Right.
And yeah, that whole education about the effectiveness of sleep is really important.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. It's where our brain grows. It's where our brain integrates. I mean, our brain has to stop at some point and do that. So, for sure, that's a huge piece to everything, the
Yeah.
emotionality during the
Yeah.
day, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the hippocampus is so attached to emotion that anytime we have some kind of event going on that is relating to handwriting, and
Mhm.
there's a negative emotion that goes along with that, well, that's just going to add one more step to the refusal category.
Yes.
TV teacher has made it so much more fun. It's adding a positive element and a positive emotional memory component to the handwriting, which is overcoming that. So that's great.
Thank you. We get that's the primary feedback we get. They're like, it is fun for the kids. I mean, they enjoy
Hmm.
it, they ask for it. This is I think that's why Jamie's school system picked it. The teachers had it. I love that they did a pilot, the teachers had a choice, and that's the
Hmm.
one they chose worked the best for
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
Um,
and I understand that she's working on making that a article in a jot.
oh, well, that would
It's
be
just
lovely.
I'm just putting that out there. That I know she wants to work on getting that written up, but
Yeah.
uh, I'm not sure how quickly it'll get done. Her
It's
having that little one at home.
I
If
know.
anybody doesn't know, Jamie had a baby back in October, so
Mm,
uh, yeah, she's
yeah.
got little one taking up a lot of her time and distracting her right now.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah,
It's a tough time, but it's a
yeah,
wonderful time too.
yeah. So, how does dysgraphia impact your day?
Well, traditionally, I guess because we can't really diagnose per se at such a young age.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I can tell you that when we're screening, like during the centers and when I'm doing private sessions,
Mm-hmm.
um, for sure, we are always looking for how we can help children
Mm-hmm.
better write. Where are the deficits? What are the deficits? And with dysgraphia, it's tricky because there's so many different pieces to
Yes.
it. It is
There are so many different pieces, and a lot of it was not put into one place.
right.
Understanding where it fits in was very difficult as I did my research.
Right, right. So, I mean, everything that I'm doing definitely is working on pieces of that, whether that
Mm-hmm.
is a midline activity, whether we're wheelbarrow walking, or whether we're writing at the desk and working on, just eye convergence and, eye hand coordination. So it kind of infiltrates in every aspect of the writing piece.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, and even primitive reflex work. I mean, when I'm doing that, I mean, I think that has a direct effect on
Mm-hmm.
dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is, again, a very underlying fundamental piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometime we're going to have to come back and do another interview down the road. And I'm going to have you talk a little bit more about those primitive reflexes, because I
Oh,
know it's such an important piece of the
mm.
puzzle and a lot of people don't understand it.
Yeah, it is. It's a huge piece. It definitely came later in my practice, the awareness. I mean, you always learn them in school. Oh, this is how you test, and this is how, but how
Yeah.
does it affect function? And
Right.
yeah, I've taken
And
some
how it looks from an infant in the pictures when you're learning it in school and how it looks in a 9-year-old are not quite the same because of length of
right.
body.
Right, right. And yes, and I find that is something I will tell you, OTs who are listening to this, that is something that always wows teachers. Like when I see a kid throw an ATNR out while they're doing something and their arm automatically comes back and they're so focused on whatever they're doing with the other hand. And I tell the teacher this is what's going on neurologically. They're always like, wow,
What?
yeah,
And-
really? And that is great. And I will give a shout out to a friend of mine, Janine Wiskind. She was my student at one point during
Yay,
field work.
students. Aren't they fabulous?
I know she's no student anymore. Now I'm her student. And she does a class on primitive reflexes through
Mm,
PRI, and it's great.
yeah.
A great
Yeah.
class. Yeah.
Yeah. Primitive reflexes and rhythmic movement fascinate me.
Yeah.
Fascinate.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
and I think
look,
it reaches a
I,
lot of your population.
yeah, I do a thing with BDPQ where I'm using the entire body.
Uh-huh.
So your B is a left arm, your D is a right arm, your P is your left leg, and your Q is your right leg. And I put up on the screen BDPQ in all different order. And I have a metronome app on my phone, and I try to get
Ooh, that's
them
hard.
going on the beat. And that isn't the
Yeah.
most difficult thing for
Yeah.
kids to switch.
Might be hard for me.
Sometimes I'm even saying the wrong letter as I'm helping them along,
We're all
and
working on
they're
it.
doing fine, and I'm like off in the
Yeah.
tangent.
Oops.
But and the research with interactive metronome is saying that there is science behind whether a kid's advancing the beat or delaying the beat, which is really interesting.
That is interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Look into that. That's very
Yeah.
interesting.
So check them out a little bit, because and if you, with you having a private clinic, you probably can get the machine and have it there. With me
I
being
know.
mobile, I haven't been able to get the machine because I have to recalibrate it at every time I go to a student's home, and it takes like a
Right.
half an hour to calibrate it. So
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't work.
Yeah. It's not realistic. Yeah.
No.
But the
So I've
clinic.
not gone through with it, but I've taken a lot of their courses, and I try to incorporate their ideas into some of my
Mhm.
treatment. And BDPQ is one that I do a lot.
That's excellent. Also, Sheila Frick, uh, Cheryl Frick's work for music listening, therapeutic music
Mm-hmm.
listening,
Mm-hmm.
has been good for me to work on dysgraphia, to work on midline issues,
Yes.
to work
Yeah.
on
The
whole
therapeutic listening
body.
is a very powerful tool.
Yeah. And my newest thing that I need, it's kind of like I have these, this is how long I've been doing this. I have these like books in my closet. And I'm like, okay, this is the book I'm opening now. I just did an Instagram post on her Mary Quar, her
Okay.
astronaut program. I just haven't gone back,
Yes. The
and I
astronaut
have the
program.
board,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
I need to do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, you and I are on the same boat. We're just going to have to make each other accountable for getting these projects done that we need to get finished, because
Right.
that's one of those that I've also looked at and haven't had the time to do it. So
Oh,
there we go.
yeah, I know.
So, now, before I ask my last final questions, do you have any questions for me?
I did. I had
You
some
do.
questions.
What do you
Yes.
what do you want to ask me?
Big questions. Um, my question for you was, is there a specific assessment or test that you like when you're looking at dysgraphia, or any, and also, even though it's not our skill set to diagnose dyslexia, is there anything that also clues you into that really
Mm-hmm.
quickly?
And you're talking like that 3, 4, 5 year old.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
or older. I'm just
Or
curious.
older. Okay.
Elementary. Yeah.
So looking at the 3, 4, 5 year old, there aren't as many standardized assessments. What I utilize when I'm looking at a 3, 4, 5 year old is I'm looking at those developmental assessment tools. The help, I think, goes to like 3 and then cuts off, but there's some that get in that middle of the road gap, and I can't really, since I don't work that as much, can't pull them right out of my hat. And that's one of the things that my co-writer and I are working on, is really coming up with some really good foundational tools. If you look on my website on the homepage, it'll tell you the symptoms. And it's just going to be a developmental know it, whether is this child making their
Mhm.
letters inconsistently? What is the research saying about writing your O's in the wrong direction, starting at the bottom and going around, or what have you? What's developmental for that age at this point? I think that is more where we're at with that age group. When we get into the school-based era, and we're really looking at standardized tests that are much more affiliated to the paper and the pencil, I think we get a better, clearer answer. Does that
Right.
did,
Right. And
did
what are
that at
those?
least answer the 3 to 5 part?
Yes. And then
Okay.
what are the tests for the
So
elementary?
when I look at kiddo in the elementary age group, first thing, almost everybody that I interview, anybody that I talk to, I will tell them to stop using the VMI. The VMI has been researched and has been found to be ineffective at anybody who knows what a letter looks like. So if you know what the capital A is and the lowercase a is, I just use A because it's the beginning of the alphabet.
Right.
If
Right.
you know what they look like, no matter what you do on that VMI, you're getting false report. So stop using the VMI.
Interesting.
Okay. What I try to do is I've tried to look through all the assessments and find one that was giving me accurate results, giving me good feedback of all the subsets. So figure ground, the visual closure, and all those other components of visual perception and visual motor integration. And when I went back to look at from a cost benefit perspective, the DVPT is my go-to.
PT. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
Yeah.
it's because of the cost benefit ratio. The
Mm-hmm.
other ones that I do like are the TVPS and the TVMS, which is the test of visual motor and the visual perceptual skills. Because it's 2 different tests, I went with the DVPT because it was one integrated assessment. So I
Mm-hmm.
use that, and I really look at objectively what is going on with the letter writing. And the only standardized handwriting assessment that's out there is the THS, the test of handwriting skills.
Mm-hmm.
The etch is
If not,
ineffective. It's not standardized normed properly. And I get that feedback kind of through the grapevine, but I have basically I've looked at it, tried to utilize it, and I was struggling with the standardization pieces to it. It was still a little bit too subjective.
Okay.
But through the grapevine, I've been told that it isn't the most effective assessment out there. And the other one that I was thinking of was the print tool only gives you a percentage of that individual letter. It doesn't, there is no standardized piece to that, other than the fact that does it have a gap, and what's the percentage of letters that have gaps for that across the board. So it really isn't giving a standardized, this number gives you a standardized score, which is going to put them in this category as far as the norms go. We're not there yet with the print tool. I don't know if they've gotten that research done internally to the point where they have it and it's not published yet. I don't know. But the last I looked at any of the materials coming from the print tool, I don't see that level of standardization. So the only one for handwriting is the test of handwriting skills, the revised version. But I look a lot at informally at the observation. What are they doing with their fine motor skills? Are they tying their shoelaces? Are they doing snaps, buttons, and zippers? Looking at a lot of the ADL pieces to the picture and really trying to incorporate all of that together. The more comprehensive your evaluation, the better. I also like to incorporate a sensory profile or a sensory processing measure, or both. But when I look at the sensory processing measure, if you look at either one of them and you look at really the nitty gritty of doing that assessment, you really need 3 of them done. Of each one, you need a parent, you need a teacher, and you need another person, and you need to integrate those scores to get the overall score. And one of the things that happens, I think, out there in general is we don't have a lot of time. We don't have time to wait for the material to come back. We hand it to the teacher, and we're pulled back. Another piece of the sensory processing measure that I absolutely like is their subtests, where you can send it out to the music teacher, to the art teacher, to the bus driver, and all those parts of the puzzle, and you getting a more holistic feedback. So to answer your question, I don't have a specific assessment, but I'm taking what's out there and I'm trying to integrate it all together to get an entire picture of the child. And then I will refer and have really good conversations with the school psychologist or the neuropsych, if that's who referred me, or all those other puzzle pieces. They all have to go together. And sometimes I wish that we get the reports from the other professionals as we're writing up our report, so we can all kind of integrate together and adjust our reports so that it's all unified and it doesn't look so segregated on an IEP.
Right. That's a very thorough answer. Thank you.
You're welcome. I also personally feel that an individual OT goal on an IEP is incorrect. I believe that our goal should be a objective component of the writing goals that the teacher is doing. I can't do that in practice in Pennsylvania. I have to have my own goal. It's just the way the Practice Act is written. But my own personal opinion is that we are an objective component of the writing goal that the teacher has.
Right. No, I can see that too. That's interesting.
So I hope that was thorough enough for you, and even gave you a little bit more feedback from my own personal opinion for that question.
No, I love it. Thank you.
You're welcome. I think you had another question though. Did you?
I feel like I did, but I can't.
Yeah. What is the most informative testing? Maybe that was part of it. I kind of
That was my
incorporated both.
biggest question.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I wanted to know at what age
What age? Dysgraphia. I
or
really don't
diagnosed.
think that you can really get a true answer to that question until you have a child that is writing something.
After kindergarten, first.
Granted, if they're refusing to write, you've got that piece of it, but it very well could be behavioral.
Right.
It very well could be a negative emotional response to something that has nothing to do with handwriting. So you really
Right.
need to have some kind of piece on paper,
Yeah.
something that they can write to give an answer to that. I also, when I really look at the core of dysgraphia, if there is any neurological condition, it is a subcategory. The neurological condition takes precedence. So if there's an ADHD or an autism or a cerebral palsy or anything like that, that's taking the precedent. And then the delay in the handwriting is a comorbid condition, and it would be on the second axis on a psych report.
Right. Okay.
So if the only way it's a true dysgraphia is if it's a piece that does not have a neurological component or orthopedic. I mean, if you got an orthopedic condition in your hand, yeah, that's going to supersede it. But if you
Right.
don't have anything and you're going to fall into a specific learning disability category, you don't have a neurological condition that's coinciding.
Right. Right. Okay. That makes
Okay.
sense. Yes.
All right. My big question, drum roll, drum beats, The American Occupational Therapy Association uses the tagline, living life to the fullest for OT month. We just completed OT month. It has been the craziest OT month ever in history. But what does the living life to the fullest mean to Marnie Danielson?
Well, not going through a pandemic.
Going through a pandemic. That would be a
Let's
really
start
good way
there.
to start the day.
That's not
Yes.
living life to the fullest. It's got to be so challenging for our parents, our kids, everybody. Right? It's such a challenging time. But seriously, that expression is means a lot to me in terms of working with children because they have such a rich. They give so much, and the funniest thing is they don't realize. They're just sunshine in everyone's life throughout the day. And so
Mm-hmm.
you really, as an OT, I feel like you have more impact on all their environments. So
Mm-hmm.
living life to the fullest means living through different pieces of your life. And, school and home are their big pieces,
Yeah.
and so really in the pediatric world, you really get to work with the teachers, you really get to work with the parents.
Yeah.
And it's a very holistic approach. Whereas, some therapies are just involved of, okay, come in the clinic and I'll look at your hand and we'll work on this and we'll do some exercises. But, this, you're kind of living it with them and you're
Mm-hmm.
getting emails and updates. And then the exciting thing is when the teacher texts you and says, oh, look at this today, or the parent,
Mm-hmm.
calls you and says, oh my gosh, or, oh no, we've got this problem. You're really impacting all
Right.
areas.
Or several years after you're not working with them and you open up the mail and it's Joey's getting married and he invited you to his wedding.
I know. I love it. Or the
The
just graduated from
graduation
high
request.
school
Yeah.
and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm so young.
Mm-hmm.
But it is
My,
such an honor to
yeah.
be
My
remembered.
first, my first family working in peds. He is in finishing 10th grade this year, but his brother ended up to be second person on my caseload. So the older brother, I started working with the younger brother first. The older brother is graduating this year, and I
So
I
great.
was initially supposed to be coming to graduation, and but how that has
Things are
changed. But
unplanned. We're not planning right now.
no, but this mother and I have become friends, and she's actually finishing her special ed master's degree this
Oh,
semester, and she does a little bit of work on the side with me, which is really cool.
That's
And
awesome.
she's the one that has encouraged me to continue to press through. And
Right.
she's one of the ones that really was the instigator to my question in my book, which was, why can my child read and not be able to write?
Right.
Which is
Yes. So
one of those I went, huh?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. You got to really think it through as to why that is. And
Yeah.
it's all
I
neurological.
love the neurological underpinnings of that, like to go
Yeah.
through that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is not really an OT question, but yet it can be an OT question, is what is your favorite podcast?
I have a couple that I really enjoy. I I waver. It depends on my mood and my day.
Mm-hmm.
So The Hidden Brain is probably one of my favorites in NPR. And they
Yes, I
cut,
like the Hidden Brain. He is very interesting in
I
what he
know.
comes up with.
And again, I just love, I think I should have been a neurologist if I wasn't an OT. You know, I just really love the neurology of it, of
Yeah.
behavior. The science of behavior is very interesting
Yes.
to
Me
me.
too. Me too.
Mhm. Fascinating.
I've actually considered taking some educational psychology classes.
Yes, yeah. And you know what I always think about is, gosh, I should really retake like neuroanatomy, like the dissecting. Like I'd love to like re-see it all again now that I have the different knowledge base. But the other one I love Freakonomics Radio. That
Yeah,
is,
that one's funny at
it's
times.
funny. It's sometimes it's just like getting your brain into something that you never thought about before, but like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
very interesting. Um, and then I'd always like Susie Orman. I like Oprah's Super Soul stuff. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
very helpful, especially during these times, just to look inward and, you
Yeah.
know, get a little inspiration for the day. So
Yeah. Yeah. I I have a couple myself. I like the story brand. I
Oh
I
yeah.
ha I love investigating marketing. And I know one of the things that you and I've talked about in the past is selling your products and learning what to do. And I really think that the story brand has some really unique um, pieces to it that are just not being told elsewhere. So that's my gift back as far as my favorite
Good.
podcast. People are probably going to get
Okay.
tired of hearing me talk about the story brand, but my other one is the OT Schoolhouse podcast. I love Jason.
Yes. Yeah.
He's an amazing guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it too. I love it too.
And I like having him on speed dial on my phone going, hey, what about this?
Here you
Uh,
go. Something to think
um,
about. Yep.
there we go. Yeah. And who'd have thought that I'd be talking to somebody in California or Dallas 5 years ago before this whole thing began. It's been amazing just to
Awesome.
see the connections that
Yeah. I love it.
writing a book have done for
Beautiful.
my personal life, my business, and everything. And I'm sure you feel the same way that with the TV teacher, you've reached people around the world that you would have never even thought you could have even talked to.
Oh yes. Oh yes. And it's amazing to be a part of that team. That it's a
Yeah.
great team of people working with Susan is great. And we
Yeah.
go to national conferences all the time and reconnect with faces or connect with faces. And it's like
Hmm.
it never would have happened before. So
No,
yeah.
it would have never happened. I'm just starting this year. I'm really trying to get out there and see more people. And then all of a sudden we couldn't go anywhere. I'm like, okay.
We're still seeing each other. It's good. I
We're still
love it.
seeing each other. Yes, but I will be. My plan is to really start doing some more traveling exploration as soon as I can get some freedom in
Yeah.
life. But
Yeah.
until then, I've been doing these interviews, and they've been amazing. There are so many amazing therapists out there doing their own
I know.
business. Please,
Great.
people, think about it. If you've got an idea, do it. That's
Yeah.
why I'm doing these interviews, just to encourage everybody that there are OTs out there doing side hustles. There are
Yeah.
OTs and teachers out there doing
Plenty.
amazing things. Teachers Pay Teachers is an amazing resource for all of us that are working in the schools. So that's the reason I'm doing these interviews. It's just to encourage people and give people that idea of, ooh, I thought about this one. Let's move forward and let's get it done.
Right.
Trying to
Right.
encourage them.
Right. That's
So,
wonderful. And
so
I bet
thank
it is. So I think it's
So,
fantastic.
before we close, what is your freebie that you have to share with us?
Oh, it's very exciting. Well, normally our program, as I mentioned, is very affordable. That's one, we've never raised our prices really with our streaming, even now that the technology has improved. But this month through June, and I think beginning of July, we might end it. It might extend. I'm not 100%. We're going to be offering the whole program for free. So you can go, yeah, the
Woo!
whole thing, the
You
whole.
know that's a deaf clap, right?
Yes, yeah, yes.
And for those of you, if this ever gets to the point of just being audio, I'm just shaking my hands back and forth, waving them back and forth, and that's what the
Yeah.
deaf community, how they clap. So it's
We've
easier
had a
to do
lot of
that,
good years.
and rather than smash the microphone.
There you go. Excellent. Yeah, we've had a lot of good years of working with school systems, and these we're really doing it because now the kids can't get to school, so they don't have the product. So this gives it to them right in their home. And, we've had a lot of beautiful, lovely feedback from therapists all around the country, all around the world, actually, thanking us. So it's been an honor to do. So we've had it since probably since the end of March, and we will continue on hopefully till beginning of July, so that kids can keep
Wonderful.
learning and keep writing and have
Well,
fun.
keep learning your skills, kids.
Yeah,
Keep learning. So
yeah.
I want to thank you for coming on today, and it was wonderful to talk with you. And
Oh,
tell us
thank
where we can find the TV teacher.
Oh, so you can go to our website, www.thetvteacher.com. We're also on Facebook. It's The TV Teacher. We're also on Twitter, Instagram. It's _TV Teacher. So there's plenty of avenues, and you can get to the streaming through www.thetvteacher.com. There's a big button on the very top that says "Go to live stream" or go to streaming, and there is I think the password is practice, and there is a username to put in, but I believe it's on I should have had that down here. I believe it's on our website, the
I
username.
believe you're correct. I think I saw that on that
Yeah.
page.
Yeah. And then there's I think the password is practice, but the username might be info@thetvteacher.com or something. And it's on the website, and you can just go on and
Wonderful. And then after the pandemic situation is over and things go back to normal, you're welcome to get a subscription. I mean, if it's that low cost, you can't do anything wrong with that.
Yes. It's a one-time purchase, and then you have it forever and ever and ever, and it plays on any device you want. And it's hopefully, teachers and OTs are using it on their phones, smart boards, parents are using it on their computers, whatever's, and you're just getting basically, an opportunity to teach handwriting, but also drawing with stroke shapes and scenes. Fun Foundations has all kinds of fine motor and gross motor activities, and the advanced handwriting piece. There's also a calming section on how to build a calming space and breathing techniques. Wow. And yes, so there's lots of different clips for kids.
Great. Yeah. Fabulous. Well, this has been a really enjoyable little, what was it? So an hour or so, an hour and a half, maybe. And you were just so wonderful at explaining what you're doing. So thank you very much. This is Cheri Dutter signing off, your Dysgraphia consultant.
Thank you, Cheri.